Hey, what's going on? I'm Josh Craig, the founder of Lead Flow Firm, and today I have with me Ken Lundin, the founder and president of RevHeat. Ken, how you doing?
I'm fantastic. I'm ready to rock and roll, man.
Heck yeah. No, super grateful and excited to have you here. Got a couple questions to go through, and I'd love to just start it off, Ken, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about RevHeat, kind of background on you and sort of what the business does.
Sure, it's great. RevHeat's a sales consulting and training company. And so we're out there helping B2B sales teams just get better, crush the number, become more effective, using science as a backdrop and kind of real world practical experience.
Yeah. How long have you been the founder and president of RevHeat?
We started RevHeat about 7 years ago. So
Mhm.
we're on a pretty good run.
Awesome. Heck yeah. And do you mind sharing what lead generation looked like before working with us? And whether it's at the beginning of the company, all the way up leading up to when we started working together, or kind of the first year before us working together, so like year six or so?
Lead gen, what's that? So
Well,
yeah, I mean, It's like any independent. We're a small agency. Five of us, and it's like I would probably like many others in our situation. If you were either going out and glad handing and networking and getting it that way, you've tried everything. We tried social media, we tried paid marketing, we've done paid ads on LinkedIn, Google, Facebook. We've done other outbound email type setups. We've messed with our ICP to see whether or not that works. But the easiest way to say what was going on was an absolute lack of consistency around new opportunities for us to pursue.
hmm, yeah. And when it comes to that past experience with just all the different ways of attempting to generate leads that you listed through there, were you doing that yourself? Were you working with other agencies? Was it a mix of both? What did that look like?
That was a combination of both. One of the things that we've done in the past is like literally, I've hired and fired more lead gen agencies and marketing companies than most of our clients have.
Yeah.
Because it's just, there's so much fluff and ridiculousness on the market and things that don't actually provide any real value. It's just people collecting a check. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars with these companies with less than maybe 10,000 in total sales. So it's a pretty expensive lesson to learn.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing why you think you haven't seen results with the other lead gen agencies you've worked with in the past?
I don't think most of those agencies actually spend enough time understanding the problems of the clients. So I think that's one. Two, I think there's probably a lack of a focus on deliverability. And then the third is I think that they aren't able to or don't care to pivot because that requires work, strategic thinking, et cetera. Because I know that when we've worked with you as an example, this whole thing started by interviewing our clients. Like that's how we got the words that mattered. And
Yeah.
then by having strong case studies and being very specific in our approach, we've been able to produce some pretty big results.
Speaking about results, since working with us, do you mind sharing what results have you achieved?
Well, the easy one that every business owner wants to know is we've secured 258,000 in total sales. And so that's in the last 6 months.
Hmm.
So I feel nothing but fantastic about what it's going to look like going forward. Because within this process, as long as somebody comes into it with you and understands, hey, the first 2 months is more like we're just trying to get people to say yes. And then from there, we'll dial in the ICP. The consistency has been one of those things that's been very, very different than other places. And your openness to understanding why a particular lead from a particular place is something I don't want to waste my time on or my team's time on has been helpful. I mean, to do 20 appointments a week is great, but if 12 of those aren't qualified, it's just a waste of time. So the
Yeah.
fact that you're able to kind of move that ball and make sure that we're actually kind of tightening up that market, you'd rather have 8 to 10 that are just highly qualified.
Yeah. No, 100%. And so with the 258,000, do you mind sharing, because what's interesting about RevHeat is you all have been very successful before we started working together.
Mhm.
It's not a situation where you were just barely getting by and then the hero lead gen guy came in and now all of a sudden your business is thriving. Like you've been doing great for a while, and being in business for 7 years doesn't happen without make sure you have good leads coming in and are winning deals and whatnot. So that being said, though, I'm curious to hear your perspective on what impact having this more consistent lead flow and having the 258 within 6 months there, like what impact has that had on the business? And from your standpoint as the president looking to grow the company moving forward, how has your how's your perspective on where the business is at and where it's going changed now that we've got these results and we continue to get these results moving forward?
I think the most important change outside of the numbers, honestly, is my sense of confidence. I
Mm-hmm.
entered this year. We're recording this in January, and I entered this year for the first time ever, not just hoping it would be a good year because we had reset. It's January 1, and it's like, oh, everything's great now. No, I reset this year and knew that we had a plan in place. I had six, second or third steps within sales calls that were happening in the second week of January because of the work we'd been doing.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I think A, it's given me a sense of confidence. B, it's also gotten me back to the point where I can actually put some personal goals in front of business goals because I feel comfortable that we're going to grow the revenue base. And with our business model, we do everything from, a 3-month engagement to year-long engagement. So the more of these that we continue to go, the year-long engagements really, really provide a strong base with which we can jump off and really try to explosively grow.
Yeah. You hit on it a little bit there. Do you mind sharing, in terms of impact that this has had on the business, do you mind sharing a little bit more on just life outside of the business? And you mentioned that it's allowed you've still got the business goals and you're still obviously working hard on the business. But at the same time, it's allowed you just to enjoy things outside of the business and focus on personal goals and things like that. You don't need to share what those goals are by any means, but just you might share what that's like and how this has helped you made that shift.
Well, I can tell you, I just went on vacation to Mexico, and I didn't think about the business once because I didn't bring all the concerns with me to Mexico. So,
Yeah.
that's the first thing. Like there's that sanity of separation that you get when you've actually got a pipeline.
Hmm.
So I think that's different. I think the other thing, many times guys like me and women like me, people who own businesses like me, we try to strike this precarious balance between how do I maximize my own income and how do I invest in the things that will make this scalable. And this is allowing me to actually do that and to change my focus. 7 years in, I've spent most of my time trying to set my business up to be successful long term, which
Mhm.
means I've foregone some of the income. Now that we know that we're growing on a regular basis, I can work on maximizing my income to the number I want
Mhm.
and then scale further. So it's helped in a lot of ways.
Interesting. All right. Thank you for digging into that. So you hit on this lightly earlier, and I want to get back into this for a second. Um, yeah, and whenever we first started working together, you mentioned how I think you were actively working with two other lead gen agencies. One was paid ads. This other one was working with content, who was kind of a lead gen agency, but maybe wasn't taking responsibility for their leads. You were also working with another cold email guy whenever we started working together, specifically on the cold email front. And um, we already talked about why you weren't able to get results with them in the past and what that looked like. But I'd love to dig into a bit more of why you think we were able to get the results we got. And one thing that I do want to mention that's interesting about our experience is that I started working with you, you know, earlier. I mean, we met basically through a mutual client and then started working with you on lead gen before we really figured it out and cracked it and have found a lot of success more recently. And
Yeah.
it's funny because before I was just another one of those lead gen guys who came to you was like, I can help you. Sure, like I took on the risk, you didn't pay anything up front, anything like that. But it was still a situation where I just became another one of those guys that didn't figure it out. And then we were able to come back and then it really worked. And now it's continuing to really work. And so I have my thoughts and I could go on for it forever, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts about like why do you think it worked that second time that, we came back and was like, hey Ken, like give me a second shot. I think this is gonna work really well. What do you like from your perspective, what changed in our approach? How do things differ and why do you think that's been so successful?
I think there were two specific things. One is your ability to be introspective and not fall in love with your own idea. I think in the very first case in the lead gen, just, hey, we're going to go do this thing. This is the way they should be responding. They should be responding. Oh, they're not. Right. And you fall in love with your own ideas. You leave them and you go, oh, darn.
Yeah.
And then, we separated for a couple months and you came back and said, wait a sec. I think I got this. And so I think one of the things I really appreciate about you is your ability to be introspective and strategically analyze what's happening or not happening. And whether or not it's something you have control over, it's something I have control over, or it's just something that we've got to figure out better for the prospects and clients that we're pursuing. I think the second thing, which is critically important, that has allowed us to be successful was I was open to making changes on my side. I was
Yeah.
open to making changes on what we sold and how we sold it. Prior to this engagement, we had never offered a monthly retainer model. Now we offer a monthly retainer model, and it's probably responsible for 50% of the revenue that's come in from your particular company.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's critically important to not try to oversell your product just because it's your product, but take the feedback that you get from the market when you're talking to that many people. I've talked to 70 CEOs that are target market for me in the last, 120 days.
Mm-hmm.
What a silly waste of time if I'm not taking the feedback on what the market wants. I think that those two things were critical, but I think probably the third thing that you've said to me and that we're even working on some different campaigns is this. You made it very clear, Ken, we can't decide what you want to do and then try to make the market buy it. We need to figure out what the market wants, and then how do your services wrap into that?
Yeah. Yeah. So first off, thank you, because I actually haven't asked you that question yet in terms of understanding your perspective on what things have worked. And it's, I appreciate that feedback for myself as well. But shifting gears here, so this should be an easy one for you, given the way that we structure our pricing and whatnot. With your work with us, what's been your ROI?
Oh, it's pretty easy. It's 400%.
Yeah, perfect, sweet. And so with that, maybe the pricing structure was a part of this, but why did you decide to do business with me? Like, what specifically made you decide to pull the trigger in terms of allowing me to outreach to prospects on your behalf, help generate leads for you, and then grow your pipeline?
Well, the number one thing I've always done as an owner, as a business person, back a decade, I want to work with people who are high character, high moral, high drive, high work ethic. Those people who really want to make a difference. So honestly, the number one thing they work with you, the number one thing I think anyone else should understand if they're trying to make a decision about who should I deploy as a partner, which you're a partner to my business. You are not simply just another vendor. You've got to work with high integrity people who want the best for you. And I knew that going from our previous interactions and the fact that you came back to me and said, hey, wait a second, I've rethought this. What can we try and attack this again?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not something today. You don't find a lot of people who are able to go, I've sat on this, I've thought on it, I've taken more education, I've invested in myself. So, the number one reason that I did it, obviously we've got a pricing model that's beneficial to both of us, but number one reason I did it, I wanted to work with you. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to succeed because I knew it was in my best interest too.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And with that, do you mind describing a little bit more of what it's like working with us, like on a day-by-day, week-by-week basis, and what that looks like?
Yeah, I mean, at first, I'm going to tell you, if you are not intensely involved when Josh asks you questions, wants feedback, get him set up to talk to clients, etc., well, then you're making a mistake. And so any results will clearly be on that particular person. But after that, it's quite frankly, it's pretty darn easy. Josh and I meet obviously, but we're on Slack and we Slack each other, 3 to 5 times a week. But other than that, I show up in my inbox and I see that the company was created for me in my CRM, and I see the appointment was scheduled on my calendar. And so you just show up and there it is. It's not quite set it and forget it. You just need to check on it once a month though, not once a day.
Yeah. Yeah. With that, so in terms of checking on it once a month and not once a day, what are some other forms of lead generation or ultimately trying to develop pipeline that are much more check-in once a day kind of tasks, if you will, kind of projects?
I'd say anything that you're trying to do yourself because you're not going to check in daily. Look, if you're a business owner and you're watching this and you're talking to Josh, the truth is you're probably going to do what I've done 100 times. And that is you're going to buy into some process that requires you to do a bunch of work, and they promise you the world over the course of 90 days. And if you're like me, you're good for about 32 days. I don't know if it's 32, but you're good for a number of days. And then you become the bottleneck, and then you become the problem. And that's what happens, or you hire a marketing firm who says they're going to build you a landing page, but really all they're good at is actually buying ads, and they're not that great at that. Or you go a demand gen side and you say, oh, LinkedIn's super critical, which I did for years. And we had a fantastic company that did this, that did the content for us, and they did videos and all the other stuff on LinkedIn. But I'm a business that I don't care as much about branding. Sure, I care about my brand, but we got to grow. And so, our business model from a standpoint of what needs to happen from a business growth perspective is more direct to business, like almost like a direct to consumer. We want responses, we want appointments, and we want revenue.
Yeah. Yeah. With that, do you mind sharing why someone who's listening to this right now should take action?
Sure. Get off your ass. I mean, it's so simple. I talk with CEOs every day, and we hypothesize about, oh, we want this. Oh, I want to grow. Oh, I need this. Quite frankly, the only reason that somebody's not going to pull the trigger is because they're looking for a reason to understand the full outcome. Right? You're looking, I got to know 100% what the hell's going to happen here. And guess what? You can't.
Yeah.
But what I can tell you is this, that if there's anybody in the world who's going to do this for you and put their heart, mind, and soul into it and be smart about the way they use technology and people and the way your brand looks in front of others, it's Josh. So just make the decision and stop looking for perfect and start making the moves.
Well, thank you. And on that note, kind of on the flip side, and probably one of the most important questions of this whole interview, how can we improve? We've been working together for 6 months now, specifically with the cold email and seeing a lot of success with that. But that being said, what's the top way that we can improve in terms of the next 6 months, next year, next 2 years?
For us, honestly, it's just going up market, and it's just, let's continue to refine that approach. But that's just because you asked me the question and needed an answer. Because the truth is, you're already doing all the things to improve. I mean, you're always thinking about the business of lead flow generation in a manner that's, how can I get better? How can we get better? How can we produce more results? It's one of the few times I've had a relationship where I don't need to be the person driving the strategic questions like that with my partner. I don't need to be driving those with my vendor. You're coming back to me and talking about how we can figure out data better and how we can find out exactly, kind of buying niches, what transitions are happening within companies that make them more likely to buy and more likely to have appointments. There's not a lot I need to do. I just come to you with some ideas and we put them in motion. Yeah.
Well, Ken, seriously, thank you so much. Not just for your time here, but just for allowing me to work with you and with RevHeat in general. It's seriously, an interview aside, I'm really grateful for it and really enjoy working with you. So thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, me too. 2024 is going to be fantastic.
Yes, it will. Yes, sir.